phone. Hello, hello, and welcome back to yet another episode of Dark Shad-Bros. Thank you so much to everyone who tunes in every week, or almost every week, depending. We've been a little jaunty with our show schedule as of late, but this is good. We're doing like two basically in a row. So we do thank you for supporting us, old and new fans alike. Please, however you're watching this on Facebook or YouTube, be sure during or after to hit like and subscribe. It doesn't cost you anything, and it helps us to build up our viewership and our membership. Leave comments on the pages, ask questions, share thoughts, share stories, and do that throughout the panel. We're going to try to get better about answering more questions because we had a shitload. Pardon me. It's not that much of a family show. we had a crap load of questions last week in regards to our current topic. So if you have a question, swing it on by, and we'll try to get to as many as we possibly can. Now, for those of you who don't know me, and there's absolutely no reason in the world why you should, my name is Peter Mack. I work primarily in the world of cabaret, musical theater. Done a bunch of off-Broadway shows, tours. I work now mostly as a cabaret artist and a tribute artist, usually paying tribute to the late, great Judy Garland, the world's greatest entertainer. So that is my story. We usually recap with how we all got involved in this crazy world known as Dark Shadows. And I was 4 when I saw my first episode, old Barney Boo being let out of the coffin on the NBC reruns in the afternoon in the 80s, and then on the New Jersey Network, and eventually through the MPI home videotapes, where I became a full-fledged fan, started going to the conventions, started writing comedic one-acts for the conventions, and getting to work with, lucky enough to work with some of the stars and even become friends with a couple of them. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. I will now throw it over to one of my other co-hosts, Mr. Michael Panzerato.
Good evening, good evening. My name is Michael Panzerato. I am also an actor, but I tend to lean toward more the Lost in Space, Jonathan Harris side of things when it comes to tribute stuff, and nowhere near official as my friend here. You could check out, you used to be able to check out some of my work on YouTube. It'll be back. We'll talk about it later. Dark Shadows. I've been a fan of Dark Shadows since, about first or second grade. WBFF, Channel 45 in Baltimore, brought it back at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And I'd heard about it a lot from my father. It's actually a 3-generation series for my family. My grandmother watched it, my father watched it with her, and then now me with my father, or then me with my father, and my son with myself. Love it. I used to steal my father's graduation ring for my index finger. I had a bamboo cane cut down to size, and my mother had a black, don't ask me why it was black, but a black shower towel that I used to pin on my shoulder and walk around in the city dressed like that, as thinking I look like Jonathan Frid. But still, the love goes on, and we're here today to talk about continue celebrating that love, and hopefully it never dies. So that's my shtick, and I'm sticking to it. Next to the brains of this outfit who keeps the thing going together, because obviously I know nothing technically. I can push a button and that's about it. But anyway, this man keeps us together. Dr. DJ Schaefer.
Hey everyone. Hello, hello, hello. I am DJ Schaefer. I'm Peter Mack's other half. I have been a fan of Dark Shadows since Peter and I got together, so that's 22 years. And we've become friends with several of the actresses from the show and performed with them. Laura Parker was a very close friend of ours. We spent a lot of time with her, overnights at her house. Peter wrote a play especially for her. We did a cabaret act with Nancy Barrett for several weeks, and we've produced events with Marie Wallace and Donna Wandry, which is fortuitous because I was born on the day that Megan Todd was introduced to the show. So Marie Wallace's last role that she played. So that being said, let's start the show.
Well, this is great because we have like now we're doing almost two in a row because we did our last one on was that Monday night or Sunday night?
Sunday night.
Sunday night. Sunday night. It was our first show back after a while, and it's true. Michael said it was like no time had passed because we had not done a show together in a long time. And I missed it. I think I speak for all of us when I say we totally missed all being fireworks. Michael's a sweetie. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you. It's nice to be back and talking about one of our favorite subjects in the whole wide world. But before we go into our topic of the night, I am so jealous, Mr. Panzer. Now, we're getting ready to see the movie this weekend for the fourth time. It's still playing here. 10 Oscar nominations as of this morning. I am tickled pink. And the only thing that pink goes really good with is green. You went to see Wicked last night in Manhattan.
I did on Broadway. I did. It was tremendous. It was really, really, really good. And apparently, we caught it at the end run of the two actresses who are playing Alphaba and Galinda. This is the end of their run. So we caught the last. So it was a little bit seemed a little sentimental there toward the end. And there was a Dark Shadows spotting.
Yes.
A Dark Shadows spotting. I have no trouble with her last name. Donna McKechnie.
That's
exactly.
That's it.
Donna McKechnie, who was Quentin's lady who lived off of the portrait, right? She was created. She was a created being from a portrait that
Charles Delaware Tate.
Yep, she was there. She did a great job. So it was a very enjoyable stuff. I'm not gonna lie to you. The fun of it ended up being for us was the young man who was seated next to me at the theater. He was a young guy. He went by himself. I'd say max 22 years old. He went to the theater, got his tickets by himself, and we watched him react through the whole movie. A lot of this, a lot of this, a lot of this. This guy. I said to him during the intermission, I said, you're making this an experience for us. You know that, right? We're half of our fun is coming from watching you enjoy this piece. So it was a great time. Great time to be had by all.
And I've heard Donna's wonderful as Madame Morrible.
Yeah, she was. She was very good. Very good. She suited the role. You would never have suspected that from seeing her in Dark Shadows, but she did.
Yeah, because she's not a villain. She's not a villain in Dark Shadows. She's the damsel in distress.
Mm-hmm. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. The costumery was incredible.
Oh, yeah.
Hers especially. Her costumery was incredible. Galinda's was a hoot. She would look like a stewardess or Jacqueline Onassis at certain points, some of the outfits that she had on, but it was great. It was really an experience. So.
And I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that I am sure that I bet Defying Gravity probably got like the biggest ovation. What that song has come to mean.
Yeah. It was again, my friend beside me, he was in tears and clapping and this kind of shaking and all that kind of stuff. So it was pretty cool. It was pretty cool.
And you haven't seen the movie yet, right?
No, but I leaned over partway through and I said, now I really want to see the movie because
you gotta see it. You gotta see it.
All the stuff in the show that you watch in theater that you think, I wonder what that would look like cinematically, when she lifts up, and all that kind of thing, and what that's going to look like, and Oz, and who was a real dick.
Yes.
It almost went Oedipal for a moment. Makes you forget your troubles. Want a sip?
Yeah.
Oh. And my wife says, she leans over and says, I think you could play that part pretty good. When he was singing, I think you could play Oz. I was like, how dare you?
You would be a great wizard.
Yeah,
you'd be a great wizard.
Oh God, he was terrible. And can I do a spoil?
Go for it.
I mean, I'm not going to go crazy, but in the beginning, when I love how they do this, the mysterious character that is actually her father, the back of him with the long coat and the zoot suit hat, and the way he does his hand with the serum in his hand or whatever, the drink in his hand, the
Yep.
way he
The
rattles his
elixir.
hand, and yeah, and he's just kind of backing up with her. You only see the back of him. I thought that was so cool, so well done. It reminded me of one of those Chuck Jones zoot suiting wolf characters.
Oh,
I
sure.
thought that was great. It was wonderful, wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're going to, before we move on here, I've got to pander this to everybody. You got to have to go see Wicked the movie.
Yep.
If you haven't seen it, and again, I know it's on Prime, we've downloaded it, but I have one friend, I believe now 17 times he's seen it in the movies. And it's true, the scope to see what John M. Chu did with it, as you mentioned about opening it up, turning it into a movie on the scope of The Wizard of Oz. It really, like, you just get swept up in it. You get swept up in it the same way that you get swept up in the 1939 film. It's got that kind of, so yes, download it, but if you can see it in a movie theater, try to see it in a movie theater. It's well worth it. Well worth the
I,
17.95.
I'm very anxious to see Michelle Yeoh's interpretation of Madame Madame Horrible.
I'll tell
I'm anxious
you
to see.
that we're going to get to Dark Shadows, guys, I promise. But with Morrible, in the show, she borders on pantomime. I mean, the
Yeah,
makeup and everything, she borders on pantomime. But, and you know out the gate, this woman is up to no good. So you go in and you watch the movie, and I'm watching and I'm like, oh, wow, she's, they've changed her. She's actually really nice. That is how good Michelle Yeoh is in this part, because she pulls the wool over your eyes, and when the mask falls, it falls with a resounding thud.
oh yeah,
She's
she's a
great.
great actress. I don't think I've seen anything with her that I didn't. And she's in Star Trek. She's in Discovery, right? And she plays a very benevolent
Oh,
captain.
right. Right.
Uh, Now they're about to release, because with this multiverse thing now, she's playing like that person, but a variant of her who is in something called Section 31, which is sort of a CIA for the Federation. So she's a villain.
Right.
She's very hardcore. So I can't wait to see that. She's absolutely one of the best actresses of this age,
She's great.
without a
Sure.
doubt. Without a
She's
doubt.
great. Now, the subject at hand, which,
Let's just say hello to some people who've said hello to
yes,
us.
please.
There is
Hey, Gary. Hey, Carrie.
Carrie Perwicka. Hello,
I've
guys.
got to
Looking
look down,
forward to
otherwise I
another
can't
fun
see.
evening. We are too, Carrie. Thank you for tuning in. We have a lovely comment from Gary. He says, "Hi, handsome guys.
Oh my God, we'll take it.
Take it.
We will take it.
We will take it."
And he had a question. What was his question?
His question is, let's add it here to the screen. What was the worst DS actor departure for you during the show? For me, when Alexandra
Oh,
left the show, I was bereft, and I kept hoping she'd come back.
oh.
Michael, you go first.
Well, I have to agree with you about Vicky. That was tough. So my guy kind of left but came back, but I hated the way he left, and I really hated the way he came back was Nicholas Blair. The reason I think is because the way he was introduced to me was this guy was not a warlock. He was more like a demon, and he was way more powerful than in the way it ended up. I mean, I love that Angelique bested him, but I think the way he kind of left was weak. But when he came back was just hideous. When he left, when he came back, he was, he wasn't anywhere near the Nicholas that reduced her hand to a skeleton, to skeletal and all that sort of thing. So Nicholas Blair, I think they could have done a lot more with him.
I got to go with Vicky, too, because she was so beloved, and I don't know if Chad Moore is watching or not. And Chad is a Vicky, that's his girl. I loved Vicky, too, and it was tough to say goodbye to her. And yeah, I think it was, I don't think they had a handle because they didn't want her to leave. And so Betsy Durkin is a very sweet lady, but it just never quite fit. We met Betsy several times at festivals. She is a doll. And I don't think she was given much help, to be honest. She was a totally different type. I do think that Carolyn Groves, who came in for that very brief sojourn to 1795, she was more in the ilk of Alexandra, and I would have liked to have seen her go on with it. But in the end, it'll always be Alexandra's part. So I think Alexandra leaving, I think Catherine leaving once she's no longer in the show, because I always had a soft spot for Maggie Evans. Um, and she joked that, when she went to Dan Curtis because her contract was up, she had been working without a contract. She had finished the movie. And she said, I'm marrying Ben Martin, her first husband, and I'm moving off to Paris. And he said, you're crazy, you're nuts. And quite literally, so, that's what she said. He sent me off to Wincliffe, having killed me off how many other times on the show. This time he sent me to the loony bin in my last episode. So I think it was tough losing Catherine too, because she was such a part of the Dark Shadows family. So I'd have to say that Vicky and Maggie, Alexandra and Catherine, I think are two of mine. I hated to see Jason McGuire go, but you couldn't wait for him to get it too. I mean, he was a delicious villain, But when that hand flies out of the coffin and you go, man, payback's a bitch, isn't it?
Oh,
Did you have a? Please jump in.
I forgot Burke.
Oh, Burke!
I forgot
Yes,
Burke Devlin.
yes, Burke.
Although,
Totally.
if you're a Barnabas fan, as a Barnabas fan, you were like, get rid of, oh, good, he's out of the way now. But in the same breath, as an adult, what a fun character. What
Yeah.
a great
And we've talked about, and we'll do this again in the future, the trajectory of the story. If Mitch had not had his problems and the character had stayed on, what would they have done? Because there was no way they were going to kill Burke off. Dan loved Mitch Ryan and cried like a baby, apparently, the day that he had to fire him. He did not want to fire him. And we talked about this with Nick Caputo last year in our last year's episode. So I don't know where the story would have gone if Burke had stayed with it, because they would have had to have gotten him off of Barnabas's tail somehow, some way.
Yeah, or it'd been a complete. You wouldn't have needed an Angelique. He would have been after him the entire series.
Right.
Like he would have been a very hard, guy to deal with, I think.
Yeah.
And knowing what we know now, having Vicky leave the show, we were robbed of the arc of finding out that she was Elizabeth's daughter. I mean, that really is the travesty there. So.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And since we're talking about the new Dark Shadows, which is celebrating its 34th anniversary as of a few days ago, it's true. Chad Moore pointed this out, and he runs a Victoria Winters group on Facebook. He was so trepidatious, and then, he said he just fell in love with Joanna going because she really was the perfect person for the part. I've said, when we covered this last week, that I think in the pilot, she was the best. I cited her and Joseph Gordon-Levitt as being the two standouts of the pilot. Not that I didn't like Ben Cross, but Barnabas was a little ambiguous in that pilot and not terribly likable. He didn't have we talked about this, right, Michael? He didn't have the likability that Jonathan had out the gate.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. He definitely came off as the film Barnabas and not the family's dark angel Barnabas. That he didn't give you the sense that, hey, I'm among family. After 200 years, she didn't win. I'm amid family. It was more or less, how do I have to deal with these people to get what I need?
Yeah,
very strong sense of that.
So we covered the pilot, and tonight we're supposed to be covering episodes 2 through 5. And I'll say 2 through 6. Those mofos on YouTube, we're binge watching. We get to what's supposed to be episode 6, and all of a sudden John sees Lizette Anthony's face, and he's like, they already give her credit? I'm like, I don't remember that. They have omitted episode 6 from the 13 episodes. And I didn't even have my DVD set to pull out so we could watch it. So we're going to kind of get into episode 6, but we're going to need to do a recap because we didn't get to sit down and watch episode 6, even though I know it.
We've seen it before.
Yeah, but it's I don't know why you would put up all the episodes and then keep that. It says this episode has been hidden.
Yeah, very strange.
So I don't get that. Now, the second part of the show was episodes 2 and 3 melded together, which threw me a little bit when we were watching episode 3 because I was like, where's My Name is Victoria Winters? They cut it.
Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
wasn't part of the original broadcast because it was shown as a 2-hour movie. Again, that second episode was melded into one large episode. So we're going to pick it up from there. And thoughts, right? Daphne is under his thrall. She has almost fallen down Collinwood staircase. Julia is onto something here. She knows. This is the guy. This is the guy we're looking for. I'm not going to tell anybody.
Mm-hmm.
She
Mm-hmm.
she she suspects. She doesn't know yet.
Well, Barbara Steele is not exactly. I mean, Grayson gets raked across the coals, but every time with Barbara Steele, it's like
His big eye.
so she's always got this. She goes into this impish grin. There's kind of like she goes into this very impish grin. She was great. She was delicious. I'll tell you, with Daphne, I think that I liked her a lot. I was sorry they killed her off. I wish they could have found another sacrifice. A village girl. They could have created another character. Because I loved Rebecca Stab. She was so sweet, beautiful. In fact, I think her and Joanna were the two girls I had the biggest crushes on. And they were all beautiful women. And I still haven't seen Lizette Anthony's Playboy that she did. I have never seen her. Although I know several men brought it to the festival for her to sign when she would be there. Oh yes, oh yes. And
boy.
I'll tell you, Lizette, God love her. I was watching. I didn't realize that she was a victim of Harvey Weinstein.
Me either. I just saw that.
Did you? Oh my God! It breaks your heart. And she's such a sweet lady. I met her several times at festivals. We'll talk more about Lizette as we get into her stuff. But there are a couple of interviews where I had no idea she was a victim of Harvey Weinstein's, and it will break your heart. But yeah, I had a little crush on Daphne as well as Joanna. Those were the two. Those were the two that I was most in love with. As far as the ladies go on the show. And I think her death is absolutely the most absurd thing on the show. Not so much him attacking her, but, she's in bed. Professor Woodard has given her a crucifix to wear. In true Hammer style, Barnabas is working his mojo. He makes Joe fall asleep. Deputy Harker, nudge, nudge, wink, wink, is asleep on the settee. She walks out into a very daylit Collinwood, I may add, because the night filter doesn't work anymore.
Right.
And then they wake up and find her, and it's like somebody took the corn syrup bottle and covered her like an ice cream sundae. It looks ridiculous.
Yeah. She's suspended upside down, kind of. That whole thing, even when they kill, I didn't like it when they kill her as a group. And I don't like it with Carolyn either. I think I don't know, I think it's odd to have almost the entire community involved in her death, with the famous Dan Curtis silver mirrored crosses that are in all of his vampire pieces. I don't know if he's getting them from the same store or what, but and I agree with you. It's stolen right from the movie, but it's not done very well. It's kind of sloppy, and I don't know. I don't like either of them. Everybody holding her down and either finding her upside down on the fountain or when she's actually killed. I don't like either of them, really.
What's interesting, I said to John, I would have preferred if they had done. It's very effective in House of Dark Shadows when Mrs. Johnson walks down the hallway, drops the tray, and they just, there's no scream. She's just lying there. That's really powerful. I wish he had kept that.
Yeah, That was a really cool. That was a really wonderfully done.
And by the
Really well.
way, when you visit Lyndhurst and you go into the front hallway, you can see the crack on the historic marble floor where that sterling silver tray fell. It actually broke the floor of the mansion.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so there's
Oh
Dark
wow.
Shadows will forever be tied into that. But I would have preferred that because I thought that's really spooky in House of Dark Shadows when she finds Carolyn. With her hair in a knot. I also love that all of a sudden her hair has turned into this big
He did her hair before he laid her upside down. Very sloppy. Very sloppy. Put it down.
Yeah, yeah.
Really quickly, hello, Nick Caputo.
Hey Nick. One of our honorary Dark Shad-Bros.
He just wanted to mention Robert Geringer as Dr. Woodard, losing him from the show.
Agreed, Nick. Because I loved Robert Geringer, but I think we talked about this that if if he had stayed, we would have been heartbroken if Jonathan had killed him. Whereas Peter Turgeon, you're like, kill him, give me the needle, give me the hypodermic, because he just got on everybody's nerves. So
I think this Doctor Woodard did too.
Michael, you and I are on the same page. I did not, and I love Stefan Gurash. He's wonderful. But there's something so creepy and unlikable about him.
Yeah. You know when Professor in the movie when it was Professor Stokes, I guess because we knew Stokes for so long and everybody kind of had a soft spot for Idiot. It felt differently, you know, than in this when he's going in and snapping pictures of her diary, because they have a relationship, Julia and he, and that whole thing gets really weird when they go to see Barnabas, and he's like, I don't know how you're doing this. I don't know if an intelligent person would say that to somebody they suspected of being, other than maybe Charlie Brewster. I don't know anybody who would say, you know, I know what you are pretty much, and you know that kind of thing. So he's kind of, and even with like the whole I don't know if this is episode 3 or 4, but when David runs in after having seen her resurrected, there's no real, other than Victoria, they sort of ignore the fact that this kid's going through this trauma. And I would think that Dr. Woodard would be a little bit more like, come here, let's talk about this calmly and tell me more, boy. It was more like let's get him out of the way and go on to the next
Well, Joe, see, that's what I liked. Joe is so sweet. With him, you know, he hugs him and, you know, and says, I know, I see her too, you know, and he calls him little guy, and forget it. I don't even want to say what's going through my head, but I'll keep that to myself. Because Mr. Weiss, you know, hubba hubba zing zing. But that's really sweet. I like that he's the one that comforts David, and, you know, because, and that goes through the next couple of episodes. I forgot that his boat is called the Daphne.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that.
So, you know, he really was in love with her. You know, they changed that whole dichotomy of Joe and Maggie. They kind of brought the Carolyn thing, and you can tell, like, Carolyn is bad news in this, man. She has been after, it's like her cousin hasn't been staked for 2 minutes when she, you know, gets him on that boat and straddles him, you know.
What are they saying? Moonstruck, that cheap set of goods. That cheap set of goods.
Mona, she's a real piece of cheap goods.
Just terrible. Yeah, I think she's kind of, that's really a low life thing to do. And you wonder, there's no love for Roger in this either, because Roger, you know, his son says something to him, and his other comment was, I think it's best that he go to bed. And Roger says, that's the best thing I've heard all day, the best idea I've heard all day. And I'm like, Jesus, what's your problem? You know, you lost a niece, here's your son, you know, begging you for some kind of attention or something. Pay it, you know, do something. Don't, you know, just don't go smoke your pipe and have another drink and go to see Maggie.
Can we point out the fact that David goes to bed without dinner? The adults have all finished their dinner.
Oh yeah.
And I'll tell you, there was quite a spread on that table. I mean,
That would have killed my
this is
mother.
the Italian in me. There was quite a spread on that table.
Yeah. That would have killed my mother if she'd watched that and picked up on that. That was a punishment she never understood. You don't send a child to bed hungry ever. So that would have been a huge thing for my mom. God bless. Yeah.
It's
Poor
watered
David.
down. That
He
scene is
really can't.
it's watered down from House of Dark Shadows. It doesn't play quite the same way,
Yeah.
but I do like the tender moment between Joe and David. I do like that.
Do you know what's interesting about the movie that I don't get in the series, and I don't know whether I like it or don't like it. Um, in the movie, these scenes, there's a coldness that seems to permeate the whole thing. And I don't know if it was maybe the time of year that they shot, and they shot it in New York versus having shot it in California. But there's a sense of cold uh, in the house. Everything feels kind of like there's no real warmth. There's no like center of. Whereas in these scenes, even though they're in the rain, you don't have that sense of coldness, that you have in the movie. And I don't know if I like that or I don't, but it's definitely missing. Like with the scene with David and the scene when they find her dead, Daphne dead. It doesn't have that same. There's just a palpable cold feeling.
It's interesting
Um,
you say that because that I don't want to jump too far ahead, but that
mm,
scene between Roger and Elizabeth, where she's just gotten news that um, the professor is dead, and she's sitting there in front of the fireplace, and Roger gets on his knees and is holding her hand, and she says, "I don't understand it. We've had so many good times in this house. It really is.
It's like a dark cloud has settled over Collinwood. Yeah,
Yeah,
you know,
mm,
has it all have the good times all gone away? You know, and he points out to her, well, we've also had our share of misery as well. But it's a very sweet moment between the two of them, and that's where like Roger's a little uneven, because she says, "Thank God, I'm so glad you're here, and David's here, and Carolyn is here." That's a really sweet moment
yeah.
um,
mm.
between them as brother and sister. You didn't get a lot of that in the original. I mean, she really felt like she had to lay down the law with Louis Edmonds' Roger because he really was a ne'er do well.
Oh yeah. Hmm. Where the hell have you been? And didn't he say something about I didn't know he was going to go missing today or something like that? Isn't there something in that between Edmund and Joan Bennett where he was like, I had no idea what was going to something like that. She's like, I've been Roger, that kind of thing. She reads him out, lays him out for it.
And yeah, and right in House of Dark Shadows, that's what you mean, right? Yeah, yeah, they do.
Yeah.
They get into a fight. You know, what are we going to do about him? And it's like anything we're going to do, we can decide in the morning, Liz.
Right. Right. It's weird because you expect you have that cold feeling from Louis Edmonds, but I guess because in the series you see that he does love David.
Yes,
You that kind of rolls over in your mind when you're watching it. But then when you see this movie, you get the impression almost at points that Rathan is a warm guy. He's a nice guy until it comes to David. It's very strange. It's a different
well, he really, and we're
kind of thing. It's very odd.
looking at my notes here. We went to I mean, just with Daphne, they totally do a salute. Again, he ripped off so much from House of Dark Shadows. It's if I catch this one, Daphne isn't dead. How many times poor kid has to say that, and then she shows up, and clearly, when you become a vampire, Amanda Burst pointed this out with Fright Night. You get a permanent.
That's so true. The
Oh,
hair is fixed beautifully. I
she had
forgot about that.
that beautiful straight kind of bob, and all of a sudden now she's got this this 1980s permanent. And Rosalie Wallace did a beautiful job with the dress. She really did a nice salute to Nancy Barrett's, what do you call shroud?
Yeah. Amy had quite an updo. I mean, her breast, everything about Amy changed. Even her, I know. Amy, it's me. I know. Everything changed with her when she got bitten. Um,
um,
mm,
and
mm,
this
mm.
and again the sex because when they with Joe And I noticed, I said, they were no fools here. Whoever was behind the camera saying, get his shirt off, get his shirt, he's on the
Yeah.
boat, get the shirt, unbutton that shirt as much as they showed him. And man, did Michael T. Weiss know how to work it? Because when he's walking down that stable hallway to her, he is strutting his stuff like nobody's, and it's hot. It's very, very sexy. It's the only thing they didn't do that they did in House of Dark Shadows, and I'm amazed the censors let them get away with it, was, you and I pointed this out, when she bites Todd, there's a lot of slurping and sucking noises going on.
Yeah.
You
They're
know,
not shy.
yeah. But they didn't
No
do
risk
that with
playing
Daphne and
tonight.
Joe.
No. And I think what they missed out in this was in the movie when they were alone in the barn or wherever they were. The cop, you see the cop move past, and she's in the background feeding off of Briscoe's character. I can't remember the name. Tad or
Todd.
something. Not at all. Todd. So she's feeding on him, and he walks past her. Wouldn't have noticed her had not his hand knocked something over. And then in this, you don't have that kind of. It was freaky as hell in the that whole bit. Like, you just walk right past her, man. How could you not see that? You don't get that kind of same kind of the dark and creepy.
And we get one black cop.
I was just about to say
And
it.
we get one black cop. I'm not going to go down that road because it's been brought up over time at festivals.
Right.
It's like the nurse who blocks Nicholas Blair from getting into Tom Jennings' hospital room. I loved her. I was like, I wanted this nurse to have a recurring role because she was great. But it's like, yeah, we got one black cop on the show. I'll leave it there. We'll leave it. Yes, we'll leave it there. But the staking scene is hot. I mean, even when on Woodard, they go right in on the bag. The camera zooms in on the vampire hunter's bag. What I did like is that Woodard actually looks like he wants to cry. It actually made because he knows this girl. Right. He knows Daphne. He knows the family. So you see, and even with Joe, it's more somber than it is with Don Briscoe. I mean, when she gets the they take the contact lenses out, and her hair, I think, reverts. They totally make her look the way she did before she turned. And
we have a comment, actually.
Okay.
So E.D. Lewis reviews. Ironically, when I rewatched the episode the other night, I made a joke about her vampire hair transformation. By the way, Ed, we are fans of yours. We love your DS reviews.
Oh, we were watching The Wolf Moon Rising, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That was what we were watching yesterday.
So
yep.
Keep up the good work.
Thank you, Ed. Yes, it's true. I mean, and Amanda Burst, Michael pointed it out. she not only does your hair get bigger, but your boobs get bigger. She auctioned those babies off a few years ago, actually, because she kept them.
Gary asks, this is funny, does Joanna ever say, I don't understand?
It's interesting. I haven't picked up on anyone saying the phrase, I don't understand. I wonder if it was a conscious thing on Curtis's part. Vicky is not quite the damsel that Alexandra was. They gave her a spunkiness.
Yeah.
She's not afraid to call anybody out, although Alexandra did get to do that in the first year of the show. She goes at it with Louis Edmonds. She goes at it with Joan. We played that during our Vicky tribute, that scene where she really says, I'm over you people. I don't need this job. Fire me. Either start treating me with respect, Mrs. Stoddard, or fire me.
Yep.
So they kind of, I think, wove more of that into Joanna's Vicky. They didn't want her to quite be the damsel, but then again, Vicky had to be eventually. She had to be a little bit Not stupid. It's what Betty White says about Rosen Island. Terminally naive.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, she's terminally naive.
Not to belabor this point, but Gary asks the only black actor on the original show was with the gypsy Julianka, right?
There was a black actor during 1897, and I think that's and then a nurse, I forget her name, but she cracks me up every time I see that scene between her and Nicholas Blair. She's infusing some comedy into the show. It's great. But yes, no, there just weren't a lot of, I don't know, I guess they thought there's not a lot of black people in Maine. I don't know. So it's
Oh,
just interesting.
we have a visitor.
Is that Elfie? This is our baby. This is our newest baby, Miss Elphaba, or Elfie, who is 5 months old, and she is waiting for them to do the show again because she's going to audition for Joshua.
What is that terrible noise that he makes when he turns like a screech?
That real kind of, I don't know where they got that sound effect from. Yeah.
Oh, very
Um,
startling.
where were we in the episodes? I'm sorry,
Sorry.
guys. My train of thought derailed there.
The death of Daphne.
Yes, and then obviously Woodard is really, he's got his sights set on Barnabas.
Hmm.
Um, and
Yeah.
he points out all the things. We never see him. We never see him until after dark. It's all the stuff that David. Uh, but they also took that from the original series. Robert Geringer says, just I think it's his last episode, where he says, "Well, you want to be in the shot, don't you? You want to be in the shot, little girl.
Her name
Aww."
is Elphaba.
And she defies gravity.
She defies gravity.
Um,
Sorry about that.
he says to Burke, I suspected Barnabas Collins from day one. Robert Geringer has a line to that effect. So it's very interesting
Well,
that,
the what does he say in this one? He certainly fits all the prerequisites.
yeah,
That's interesting. That's super direct. That's very direct.
very
When you're
direct.
accusing somebody of being a vampire, he certainly does fit all of it. And it reminds you again of Friday when he says he kisses Amy's hand and says, enchanted or something. He says, "Isn't that what vampires are supposed to do, Charlie?" That's what you think of with Barnabas. He fits that. He wears a cape. He carries a cane. He wears a ring. He does fit all of those. Uh,
Yes.
those check all those boxes.
Well, and then
He when they show up when he's sick, I love that's a great scene Barnabas wise. I love Barnabas's look and how sick he is. But Woodard, you just want to kill.
it's true. Well, when Barnabas shows up to pay his condolences, and things are starting to get tense because he wasn't at the funeral. He was in Boston or Portland, where I think he says he was in Boston all day on business.
Boston.
And then rather than the compact, I missed the compact. I wish they had Julia take out the compact. She notices in the very large, huge mirror, however big that mirror is, that he's not there. So that's it. She has all the proof she needs. Um, and
That's a very interesting thing. That's a very interesting. And remember the other night I was thinking about this. I mentioned, I don't know if we talked about it on here yet though, about the attraction between Elizabeth and Barnabas. Well, that at least Elizabeth wise, she's very attracted to him. And I have to wonder, referring to that mirror, and I may be reading more into this as a fanboy than was actually written into the script or into the scene, but I wonder if Barnabas, because we'd seen him will himself onto Daphne to the point where she fell down the stairs. She
yeah,
passed out or whatever. He knocked her out. So, and we know from the old series, Barnabas exuded when he wanted to a tremendous psychic. Clearly, I've underestimated your psychic powers, but I wonder if he wasn't exuding more on all of them because of that large mirror. Like
oh,
in
Oh,
Little
interesting.
Britain, there's a hypnotist who's he through the whole thing a little birdie. Look at me, look at my eyes, look around, look at my eyes, look at my eyes, look at my eyes. It makes you think like he's doing that to draw them into attending him and not attending what's around him, so that they
Interesting.
don't notice the mirror. And I thought maybe that's why Elizabeth is kind of like, my cousin's kind of hot, because it's, to me it's like, huh. Like if I had been in the room and when he kisses her hand, and I mean even the way he kisses her hand is a long kind of lengthy, what they call in Shakespeare, on stage in Shakespeare, a pregnant pause.
Yeah.
It's like a long kiss, and he's looking intently at her, and then he walks away. And the way she's looking at him, it's like if I were there, I'd have been, huh. If I were,
Hey,
huh.
princess.
And he's got that
That's
line in
not
his
awkward.
he's got the line in his back pocket to use with whatever family member has to come first. Blood of my blood, kin of my kin.
That's right.
So
That's right. I mean, I don't know. I was playing that over and over again in my head, and then I watched it again, and I thought, well, maybe it's sort of intentional because there's this big ass mirror that, like in Fright Night in the Club, nobody notices that she's dancing by herself. You know, it goes over the room. So is he exerting some sort of a psychic hold on everybody or an influence?
Yeah.
I don't know, but kind of odd.
But it's yeah, I love I miss the compact because I always thought that was cool.
Yeah.
Um but it's great. And then, when she goes to the old house, and man, is she direct. She doesn't even try any witty, repartee the way Grayson does in Hod's. She's just like, the sun's almost down, and that's when Barnabas Collins comes to life.
I want to see him, Willie. Yeah.
And where,
Hmm.
where does that door go? Oh, nowhere. And
Yeah.
boom, we got, and now we're in the bowling alley. Just so you know, guys, Barnabas Collins' coffin room was the bowling alley of Greystone Mansion. So just in case Barnabas wanted to play nine pins,
replete with, as you enter that room, you see the big pipes running across the ceiling. So where's the plumbing in the old
And
house?
I don't blame the set. I don't blame the set designer, because Curtis's
Oh
stock
no.
answer was, they're never going to look at that. They're looking at the story. They're never going. All they had to do was cover it with ivy.
Exactly right.
All they had to do was cover it with ivy. I mean, that would not have set their budget back all that much. But I
Oh yeah.
noticed that when she confronts him, it's that, first of all, that scene was what Ben Cross auditioned with. That was his audition scene from the House of Dark Shadows script. The big scene with Julia and the confrontation. That was his big audition scene. I wish that somebody would unearth the screen test. But because it's not in the Dark Shadows Resurrected videotape. More on that later. But he's, Willie, he's giving Willie the stink eye, telling her to put the damn crucifix away. And the scene is played so differently. Jonathan is truly terrified in House of Dark Shadows. His Barnabas is afraid. When Ben comes up and meets her in the drawing room, he is so like, basically like, lady, I'll hear you out, but I just have to leap across here and you're a goner. He is so
Yeah.
sarcastic. He is so, like, over her, like, what do you have to say? You know,
Yeah. I agree. That's where Cross has a fierceness about this Barnabas that is a little bit different from ours or from the original. And I know you're talking about because he says, "How help me?
yeah,
Oh, how help me?" And but it's a beautifully played scene because
Yep.
when he says, "How can you think that anyone would enjoy an existence like this? I am compelled by forces I can't control to perform acts which both repulse, what is it, disgust and
sadden
repel,
and repulse me.
sadden and repulse me." Which, what that makes me think of, and I know this is a reach, but this is what Dark Shadows resonates to a lot of people, was Sir Michael Redgrave, who was a closeted homosexual for years. And he had a family, Vanessa,
Sure.
Lynn, Corin, Redgrave, all that. He was quoted as saying to his friends that he felt horrible about himself because he committed acts against God and all that. And it makes you think, you think that's where my mind goes right away with Sir Michael Redgrave and Ben, people who struggled and actually grew up sadly in homes where they were made to feel. If anybody were to know that I'm having these emotions, they would think me a mutant or a monster or,
Well,
you
and for
know,
those I mean, we've talked about this. We haven't done a real Pride episode yet, and we will because obviously Dark Shadows does appeal to the LGBTQ plus community. But I can tell you as a pardon me, my love, go by Daddy, go by Daddy John. Yeah, as as someone who's a bisexual queer over here, it's yes, you've got, oh my god, what if they find out, and what of this, and what if, especially it's gotten a little bit easier in recent years. But
right.
for those of us from a certain, I came out in the 90s, just before the Will and Grace Blitzkrieg and Ellen and all of that, it was still, it
Mm,
was it was still tough. It was still tough, and I think that's the thing, that where the queer community at large, doesn't matter who you are, what you are, how you identify, there's that thing with Barnabas, and then Julia, especially in the original series, saying, "Don't you think there's somebody who could love you for what you are, and
yeah.
not?" Yeah, that's a really, I love that moment in the original series. That there is
What
someone who doesn't care.
what did he say? I played Barnabas not as a vampire, but a man who had a secret.
Man who had a
Who had to
secret.
hide the man who had a secret, and so bingo, these the people that are dealing with, they're carrying that weight just like Barnabas. If I turn and move a certain way, or if I do a certain thing, they're going to see an effeminacy, or they're going to see a masculinity, or something. And there's a huge difference though between the cross and the Frid. Like you said, there's a fear with Jonathan. I mean, Ben Cross is playing with the string of his robe, his dressing gown. He's playing with the tie to his dressing gown, and he's you know, I will end you is kind of the just the yeah, that's absolutely, but it's beautifully played by but by all three.
Yeah,
Willie is a terrible watchdog. Every time
I feel
he is
so
a
bad
terrible
for him.
watchdog. He is just the worst. He lets her in with no struggle whatsoever. Then the guys are pounding on the door and he's ready to pull his hair out because he doesn't know what to do. They walk. Woodard walks right past him. It makes you wonder why Barnabas didn't beat him to death a couple times.
Well, it's interesting with the
Uh,
cure too, as she starts to give him the injections. We really get to see the effects. I mean, it's the first injection where you think, oh my God, she killed him, and even she thinks she may have
yeah,
killed him because
yeah,
his eyes roll back and he passes out. And the way he describes, tentacles, hot tentacles up my arm, and all of this, and then he just kind of like blacks out, and
yeah.
she's going, "Oh crap, I killed him."
Thurman in Pulp Fiction. She's dead. Get the adrenaline needle. Well, it always stood out to me, because part of the thing that I love about Jonathan Fripp was the size of his hands, and we've talked about this before. In those scenes when Julia gives him the injection initially, and she's got him in the chair, and he's holding his hands, and he's just looking at his hands, saying, "I can feel warmth." What is it? He says, "I feel something coming into my hands, and I can feel this," and all of that. It's a beautiful kind of. You really get hopeful. Whereas in this one, like you said, oh Christ, she killed him.
Yeah,
Oh
yeah.
Jesus, he's dead.
Whoops.
Oh,
No,
he's
no, baby.
perspiring all over. I do love his bedroom, aesthetically speaking. The black silk sheets. How cool is that? It's like a coffin.
Which was
Love that.
built. They built his bedroom.
Oh,
That is one of the few sets. Colin Wood and Barnabas's bedroom were actually built from scratch.
uh,
Well,
I think that's one of the coolest scenes in the show.
yeah, yeah. It's so the cure. Yeah, the cure is really interesting to watch and to follow. And again, the test tubes. I love the test tubes. How she puts them out in the sunlight, and it's like we used to make a
Whistling.
volcano. Remember those volcanoes for science fairs, and you would do that, and you see they would erupt. That's exact. I love the test tubes exploding. I thought that was really really cool.
Somebody dropped a Tums in a Pepsi, and they didn't.
That's right.
Oh,
That's right.
what I like is the whistling, the bomb drop, the doodlebug drop whistle. I love that.
Yeah.
Those are some interesting parts because I remember in the '90s, even having seen the show in the '60s, you had something like, are they going to change it? Maybe it's not going to work in the new show. Maybe the cure doesn't take. It doesn't look like it's going to take. And then when he sits in the don't touch the curtain, Willie, or whatever, you're actually like, what if he blows?
And she
uh,
realizes he's about to, because she sees
yeah, oh yeah,
the test tube is good. She's like, okay, if the test tube is gonna go, he's gonna go. So it's that's really good. I love those moments. Those were really
oh
really
yeah.
great. Again, also that we get to see Barnabas in the daylight almost out the gate, because he never got to go into the sunlight until Dr. Lang came along in the original series. Um, that's really sweet when he's out with Victoria. And just before that, and I think I'm going back a ways. We didn't mention this. I love when he takes her for the walk on Widow's Hill at night and has
PTSD.
PTSD
PTSD.
and starts to relive the night Josette jumped off Widow's Hill. That is a great moment.
He plays that beauty. He says you shouldn't run about here like that.
Yeah.
You know, when he realizes, oh shit. That is great, and I love the sweetness between when in this series when Barnabas, I guess because of the time constraint in this series as opposed to the other, when Barnabas and Willie become friends, it's straight on friendship. And when he's starting to be cured, he sees himself in the mirror and he puts his arm around Willie and he says, I want a mirror hung in every room in this house, and that kind of thing. The sweetness of all of that and the change between the two of them is really, really cool.
When I heard that, all
And
I could think of was Mae West. He's gonna hang one over the he's gonna hang one over the bed. Oh, I like to see how I'm doing.
I like the fact that he's admiring his Z Cavariccis. He keeps looking.
the
Well,
what
and this
again?
was
His Z Cavariccis. Do you remember those pants from the '90s?
Oh yeah. It's up to his armpits. Oh yes.
and
I
they
think I
really
had a
showed off
pair, but
too.
I didn't have.
Great physique. He was all the guys on the show
Very
were
fit.
very they were very fit, athletic
Yeah,
guys.
Well, let's not forget he
yeah,
won the Oscar for Chariots of
Chariots of
Fire.
Fire. Yeah.
yeah. He had a different sort of a stride too than Jonathan Frid. Frid had a very theater. His stride was very deliberate and very prim, not prim, but very aristocratic.
Yeah,
Ben Cross had almost I don't know how to say this, almost like an American stride, like a very cocky kind of like. I know this is jumping ahead a little bit, but I
That's
always think
okay.
of it in the scene when Abigail, they just introduced Victoria, and Abigail's going on, and he strides in and he says, Abigail, that has been knighted backwoods foolishness, and he throws his hand. He's
Yes.
walking in with, he's just got the vest on, which we didn't see a lot with Jonathan Frid. There wasn't a lot of relaxed Barnabas. He had either a smoking jacket on or one of his regular jackets. There was one scene where he had just a vest on when he had a headache, I think. But he wasn't really relaxed. In this, you got to see Barnabas in just the vest and the billowy sleeves and all that. And Ben Cross has sort of cocky walk, which is cool. I mean, it fits the character they developed in this show. He was a great shot and all of that kind of stuff. So
I am just referring to here because I didn't want to miss it. Guys, if you don't have this book, too, this has been a great source of information. Dark Shadows Resurrected by Jim Pearson. Catherine Lee Scott's company published it, Pomegranate Press. I think you can get it used. I don't think you can get it new anymore, but it's got wonderful insight to the behind the scenes of the show, as well as a wonderful, very detailed. Jim did very detailed episode guide of the show as well, and I'm just referring to it as we go through these episodes because it's a great source. If you don't have it, I'm just in terms of stuff that happened. There's some time that goes by, and Barnabas mentions, I think Julia mentions, it's been 2 months. So like 2 months time is supposed to have passed
10 weeks.
passed by in the, right, and there have been no more killings, obviously, but still, Woodard is he's on the prowl. He wants to know who did this. And that's where we wind up, and where you're saying the scene where they storm the old house.
Yeah.
I've got to stop saying I caught myself doing that way too much last week. I just did it again.
We know it's 10 weeks, by the way, because she pulls 12 vials of blood, and there's only 2 left.
Oh, you picked up on that. I didn't pick up on that.
And there's only 2 left when we come back. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh, no, not at all. But when he and Roger and Sheriff Patterson, who, by the way, I love Mako Kavanaugh. We have not mentioned him at all. And he was great. And he purposely said he chose to use the Pepperidge Farm man accent.
That's funny. I didn't know that.
And he did it
I
at the...
I noticed it, but I didn't know they picked it off of him. That's wild.
He did it at the festivals. If people say, he's like, Elizabeth, this girl kind of talks kind of funny, don't you think?
You ought to be in a hospital.
So I like him as Sheriff Patterson. Totally different than Dana Elkara, but I like him a lot as Sheriff Patterson. But that is a great scene because here, Barnabas has almost blown up with the sun, with the dawn's early light. She's trying to figure out a way to get him back on his feet, and now the house is being inundated. And Woodard is like a bull in a china shop, man. He is going to get up there. And Ben plays it beautifully. I mean, they've got the glycerin. He's covered in the glycerin. The hair is all matted and wet. And the way he comes down, I don't believe I ever extended an invitation to 3 unwelcome guests at this early hour. I mean, he's still, holding his own. And he knows that Woodard knows. And the fact that he steps right in front, and Julia's heart is in her mouth thinking, oh my God, he's going to blow up. Willie, you're going to have a hard time getting Barnabas out of the rug.
I love that they show the hand on the banister, the ring.
Yeah.
I think that's a great shot, that they show the hand come over the banister. And he says, excuse me, Roger, I don't have time for crazy ideas. I don't have time for crazy ideas or whatever. But, yeah, man, that is really great. He is not looking good. He is looking a little rough. And, yeah, and I think I like what Woodard says to her. I don't know how this is happening, but I'm going to find out,
He'll destroy you, Julia. He'll destroy you. Yeah. He destroys everything he touches.
You have to think to yourself, was he thinking, oh, Christ, he's out in the daylight. Maybe the books were wrong. Because we don't know, we don't know when they're stumbling through kind of situations. Okay, like Fright Night, so far, everything's been like in the movies. We just have to keep hoping. What happens if...
exactly.
Not. He's probably got that running through his head, which we see a little later on in the episode. He's starting to sweat a little bit, Oh, Christ, what have I done,
Yeah.
So... And I love that whole part. I love that part.
Well, then, he really gets himself into hot water with the sheriff and with the Collins family. They're pissed off. Roger's thinking, you just insulted my cousin. Accused him of being one of the undead. And when he goes back on, the alibi of wanting to apologize, and Elizabeth is totally stone cold to him
up until she says she kisses him
at the end.
Exactly.
But then he goes sauntering into Julia's laboratory, her bedroom, takes out the test tube. He sees it explode, and I want that prop. I want to know who had, because I never noticed it. Dr. Julia Hoffman, MD. I want that prop. Who has Julia's diary? Because I don't ever remember that being auctioned off.
Yeah, no, no, no. That would be cool. The empty diary. Now, I have a question about that. Okay, so who did it? Who destroyed? So was it Barnabas using some kind of occult power, or was it Angelique? Because we know she's been observing because she's still there as Laura, and she's observing things through David. So was it Angelique that made the? Do you think they were going to make it Angelique that wiped away the images, or was it Barnabas using his own? Which is going
Barnabas.
to rub it
I
off
think
on the.
Barnabas. I'm going to go with Barnabas.
Okay,
Yeah.
I love that about him too. Barnabas never configured, never just settled into the normal. I can hypnotize, and I continue to bat your wolf in that. He always had these like extra things going on. I think that was such a brilliant idea for the show.
Yeah. Yeah. And of course, Julia is pooping down her leg because she's like, oh my God, this is it. We're all screwed now once they develop that film. And that she
Right.
says,
That's a
they kind of play out the old scene where she's like, please let me talk to him. Before you do anything to him, let me talk to him. And he's like, no, no, no. This has to be dealt with immediately.
yeah. That's wild. That whole thing is very tense because you can sense her thinking, "I've got to get to this stuff before I've got to get to it before like when she goes with the sheriff. She's thinking, "Oh my Christ, this is it." We played this game, and now everybody's going to end up dead, or we're going to end up in jail, or something along those lines. One of these two is not going to end up. What is it? It's not pretty.
It's not going to be.
You ever seen 80-year-olds and a fire alarm going off? It's not pretty.
Thank you, Mrs.
It's
Petrillo.
you see her thinking that, right? You see her thinking that, through that whole part, and you get nervous for her. It's terrible.
It's kind of like, right? You could see Willie saying, the jig is up. Everybody.
Willie, Willie, I swear he was here a minute ago. Willie, he's packed up and running down the street.
Hang on, we got.
So we have uh, a
Hey,
new audience
Charles.
member. Charles, yes, we talked about this earlier, that we recognize that the old house is also with Collinwood, and we hate that fact. We really think there should have been at least a standalone exterior. He goes on to say that he felt it was too, I think he says, too Hollywood. There was no tone to the houses at all, no warmth, they were too big.
So on that, so here's the deal on that, Charles. That was Curtis. Curtis was almost ashamed of Dark Shadows, and I think this was always a slight to Cy Thomasoff because one of the things that worked in that show and that made it work were the sets that Cy created. We were talking about the coffin room last week and how that was so. That's the coffin room. Those archways and the staircase that led up, and then the big archway and the. My big gripe with this was no blue candles. I'm like, where are the blue? I wanted the blue candles. Where are the blue candles? No blue candles. But Curtis wanted something that was like a movie. Even the creative team said it was one of the reasons NBC had an issue with him. He wanted it to look like a movie. So when you say going Hollywood, you're not far off the mark. Whereas like Mark B. Perry, who's shopping around the sequel series, wants to replicate the sets that we all know and love. He wants to replicate Cy Thomasoff's sets, just a little more sturdier and maybe a little grander in scale. But that it will look like the houses that we know and love. And this is something that went over Curtis's head. I don't know why. I pointed out in last week's episode, or earlier week's episode rather, that for the old house, all they had to use was the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air's house, because it looks very much like the old house, or the governor's house from Benson, which is located in Pasadena. They could have done all their exterior shots at one of those houses and still used the grand staircase of Greystone for the old house.
Yeah.
I'm not sure whether you know this or not, Charles, but the Collinwood Great Hall and staircase is an exact replica of Highclere Castle from Downton Abbey. Right down to the archways. When you watch the costume party and you see little Sarah looking through the archways, I was like, wow, they did an amazing job because that is Highclere Castle from top to bottom. I believe to date it's still the costliest set that was ever done for a pilot. Um, so I know what he wanted. And you get so used to what you know because we have 5 years of the original Dark Shadows. So it's sad that he didn't kind of try to meet the fans halfway. So I know what you're saying, that it's and again, Michael, we've talked about this. It's not quite the same, even though they did a beautiful job.
No, it's the thing for me is uh, what made the houses their own kind of characters in the series for me was growing up in Maryland, and any of us who probably grew up on the East Coast in any of the original colonies, you had houses like the Old House and even the Great House along the shore, eastern shore in
Sure.
Maryland and Annapolis and stuff. You could look very easily and see, oh my God, that could be Collinwood. In fact, going to New York, we drove past a big body of water in Maryland, and there was a huge old house on the cliff. And I said, "You see that house? Every time I drive past that house, I think of Dark Shadows. It's right on the cliff in the woods. You know, it's you have those, so it made it familiar to you. Whereas when you have uh, this completely unfamiliar thing, and you really don't see good exterior shots of the old house at all. You get the new, and you get the front, like you said, the front door, but you don't get to see the moon coming in off of the old house like you did in the series and all. And it kind of robs you of that extra character, which the houses were, just like the Enterprise or the Jupiter 2 or the Spindrift or whatever. They were character. They were definitely characters on the show.
Yeah,
So that was a bit of a. So I get it. It was a little too grand. Now I will say this: Miss Parker said, I believe, just talking with you, young man, she said something that she'd wished, or the Merchant Ivory people could have done a beautiful job with Dark Shadows. I think it was she was speaking to you, and she said something about the
Yeah.
guys who did Remains of the Day and all of that. They could do a. They had the handle on period pieces. They could have done a really good. And I agree with her 1,000.
Yeah. Me
You were
too.
saying about Downton Abbey reminded me of that. I agree with her 1,000 times over there. That would have been a beautiful combination.
sure. And I think too that again in reading not only in this but Kathy Rush's Concordance, which is even more detailed than the Resurrected book. So much money was being spent. Like Roy Thinnis's Reverend Trask wig was $5,000. That's absurd. Um, so much was going
Jesus.
there. Custom made fangs and prosthetics. I mean, think about it. Like as the old man, we only see him. It's not like Jonathan got to play out. And I didn't like, and this is not to disrespect the makeup man. I did not like the old age makeup at all. To me, he looked like an. I know what they're going for. He's supposed to be 200 years old, but I just thought it was a little too. I don't know. It just it. I didn't care for it.
It looked like a Halloween mask of a 200-year-old man. You like if you go to a Halloween, they have that long face. Like Ben Cross has a long face anyway, and the fact that he was bald and he had the hair grown way out here, it didn't. And what you said, I loved the makeup and those episodes where Barnabas was old
Yeah,
in the original
yeah,
series. First of all, Fred. I mean, he even had a hunched back. I mean,
yeah,
it was beautifully, and I would love to have seen a little bit more with different makeup.
yeah.
He looked very demonic with the rotted teeth and all that, but I would have loved to have seen him
That's
play
one of
with that a little bit more.
that's one of my favorite scenes.
Hold that thought though for a minute, because just going back to with Woodard, and that now I love when he shows up in the house. I mean, talk about jump scares. John actually jumped in that scene. You
Me
too,
too.
yeah. First we got the cat Sylvester. He's got his cat that like Elfie. Jumps on his shoulders. And he's like, "That's not a nice thing to do to an old man." And then all of a sudden, we see, the ring, and it's, you've dared to
You
enter my bleak universe.
the beginning of that when Julia is saying to him, we got a problem, and he's putting the candles out with his fingers. slowly putting the candles out with his fingers. And he says, he doesn't even talk with her. Calls Willie, escort her back to Collinwood, make sure she goes in. And she says, please, Barnabas. And he walks out and there's business to tend to. That's great.
Yeah.
And I love when he says, your meddling has brought you into my bleak universe. That's a great ending of an episode. I wish they'd all had that kind of a cliffhanger episode ending. That was great.
One of the
how did it
writers,
turn out?
one of the
We didn't know
writers,
that.
yeah, one of the writers mentioned, I said this to John, that she said working for Dan was unlike an experience in any other in this town. And she had written for Beauty and the Beast with her writing partner. And she said on that, we were not allowed on the set. They were really, whereas Dan, she said he was great in that he'd bring us onto the set and ask if we wanted to be in the episode and put us in a costume. That's what he would. So he was kind of fun loving from that. But she said, now, Dan, what about the act break? And he said, they'll go in where they go. But she said, what do you mean? An act break is supposed to be like a real. And he's like, no, they'll go in wherever they go in. I don't care where the act breaks go. That was just his attitude towards it. And he stopped after is it episode 4? Let me get this right. I believe Armand Assante started directing as of episode 5. That's when Armand Assante took over. And then Dan was kind of in and out.
Armand Assante, the actor?
Sorry, no, Mastriani.
Got it.
Armand Mastriani. Sorry. Armand Assante was supposed to be Barnabas. He screen tested for Barnabas. That's why I get them confused.
Got it. Okay.
But yeah, he didn't care about act breaks, and but the confrontation where they go to the cottage, which is also on the grounds of Greystone, I believe. Professor Woodard's cottage is on the Greystone grounds. And he's like, well, the fireplace is on, and he's got to be home, and everything is so downplayed, and he wants the film. Sheriff Patterson he's like, I need the film. You said there's something on there. I need to see it. And he begrudgingly hands it to him. And they go to walk out, and then you hear that George, and, he's got the fangs, and that's really spooky. But now I'm like, I don't believe I forgot this. It is the whole finale of House of Dark Shadows, right down to the slow motion of the harpoon being jacked into his back.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I remember watching it on the air and not seeing that coming at all. Because you'd seen the old show, they just killed Dr. Woodard off.
Yeah.
You never dreamed that he would be. And then I thought, maybe Barnabas, this is Julia's friend. Maybe they had a word. And, he decided we're going to have Woodard help us along with this whole thing. And then when he turned around with the fangs, you were like, no. and what's worse is he didn't get handsome. Like, Daphne got sexy. You just sort of stayed homely, dear boy. It was kind of like there were no clues.
No permanent.
He didn't get a permanent.
He didn't have that would have been hilarious. If they showed up and he had like a head of hair all of a sudden. That would have been hilarious. But yeah, there was not a clue that he had that happened. So it was a really big jump kind of situation. And you felt sorry for Julia even more because she saw that go into her friend. You felt even more for her at that point.
Yeah.
But Patterson's thinking, so he's been the vampire all along. He's just been taking us on this wild goose chase.
Right.
That's really what's happening there.
Well, he still wants to develop the film. I mean, that's the big thing. And that, again, why Julia is sweating bullets. He offers her coffee. They get back to the office, and it's, how about some coffee? Better yet, how about a good stiff drink?
Well, I love, one of my favorite things in this entire series is when he says, when she is treating him, and he says, I would have killed him, doctor, believe me, but he chose eternal life. So she's talking with him, and all of a sudden he's like, he's staying cold. He's pretty cold about the whole thing. And then she jabs him.
Yes! Yes!
I'm sympathetic to how you feel, Julia. It's like she lets him know, you bastard. I thought that was great.
And I know he was your friend. It harkens back to
Yeah.
the original series. I know he was your friend, but this is where it really goes back to the original series. But I didn't kill him. It's like, dearie, you killed him, not me.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. He says, what does he say? I'm not unsympathetic.
Yeah,
But when he says, when it allows for the survival of other people, I thought that sounds like the old Barnabas. That
yeah.
whole, when he says that sounds like the original series. When he talks about that. So
But yeah, I love that too. When
the
she
whole two
sticks it,
episodes were great.
she sticks it to him, man. She really is like, you son of a bitch.
She takes it. She does that kind of loop with it. He jumps. I love that.
And also
That's
Barnabas.
old.
Barnabas has become an old hand at this because he takes the rubber band.
Yeah.
He's doing it, and I'm like,
Yeah.
Jesus, you Barnabas, what are you? You think he's a
Hit
heroin
me.
addict for a minute?
Right. Yeah, hit me. I love that whole. Those are great episodes.
And he starts playing more into that, and he doesn't mean to do it. She's getting the wrong signals because there's the music box, and this belonged to someone I knew once, and I'm going to give it to again. She's taking everything the wrong way.
Right.
Well, and Barnabas was from an era that we associate with romance. So I know that there was some delicacy in him having like a Lord Byron sort of look and the hair and all of that. So he kind of exudes, without meaning to. He was from a more we probably not necessarily the fact of it, but we had considered a more romantic time in general. So
Yeah.
everything he does and says is going to be more romantic and have a heavier, kind of a deeper. And he touches her face, doesn't he, and says, "She'll have my thanks," or something like that.
Yes.
That's not something a guy in this era would necessarily do.
Yeah.
And it's absolutely, and they do not do this in the new series, which I thought was brilliant. In House of Dark Shadows was when he realizes and he says, "Julia, I had no idea."
Yeah.
That's the only nice thing you see out of our Barnabas in the movies.
In the movie.
But it is very sweet, and you see he's genuinely shocked that he had been leading her on and didn't know it, and I had no idea, Julia.
Well, but even with the sacrifice of Daphne, again, like I said, I still can't wrap my head around that. Plus, that another sweet moment is where he says in Hod's, you're not to go near Todd. Not only are you to not go near Todd, you're not to touch anyone at Collinwood. I mean, so
Oh yeah.
he still had that grappling thing going on with no. I did this to you. I made the mistake, but there are rules.
Yeah.
There are, so Sam Hall kept trying to weave that in. I don't know if we missed a question or not. Now,
That's crazy. We used to shoot up in
Charles was pointing out that Mastroianni also directed the Friday the 13th series.
Oh.
And it's his opinion that he preferred the episodes directed by Dan Curtis.
Oh, interesting.
Versus Armand.
Interesting. I'm kind of in the opposite, but I think I can't really pick favorites, Charles. I think they both did a good job because when we get to episode 5, I love that episode so much. We staged it at my home in Elmont, Long Island, before a Dark Shadows festival on a Friday afternoon for a couple of older fans. It was me and a couple of my girlfriends. I doubled up as Barnabas and Willie, and my friend Jess played Vicky and Carolyn, and my friend Maria Scalone played Julia. Actually nailed the Julia Hoffman voice. And I have that on a VHS tape upstairs in a box. John has to transfer it for me, and we're going to show it one night where we did almost all of episode 5 from the NBC series in my living room on Elmont, Long Island, where even right down to the rainstorm that Barnabas and Vicky get caught in, we went around to the big picture window, and my friend James turned the hose on us, and we pre-recorded all of our lines and lip-synced them outside the picture window at my house so we could play up that scene with Barnabas and Vicky getting caught in the rainstorm outside of the old house. And it's one of my favorite episodes of the series. We have not talked about the elephant in the room because we start getting into the relationship between Maggie Evans and one Roger Collins, which is problematic for a lot of fans. Now, my theory is because they think of Catherine and Louis. And you have to differentiate between that. And remember, Catherine and Louis were wrangled together in 1897. They did not make a believable couple. And she's also a gold digger. She's not interested in Edward. She's not interested in Edward at all, except for his money.
Yeah.
So you got to put it into the perspective of this is a new Maggie Evans with a hint of the original being a tough girl. And she's a psychic like Roxanne Drew. Vampire Roxanne Drew. So it's different. It's not the same. And I like Ellie Pouget. I like her a lot.
I do too. It's tragic. You know, when we discuss this, the more we're discussing this, the sadder and angrier I get at the goddamn Gulf War and the fact that the network pulled the plug on this show, because they had so many great actors in this show that could have, and so many dynamics. I don't have a problem with Maggie and Roger, because this is a whole other. You don't really see Roger in the original series as he's almost like a Dr. Smith, in that you don't see them as being particularly interested in getting too involved with anybody anymore. Like, almost like Laura was a bother. Like, all right, I did that once, been there, done that. I'm wealthy. I'd rather just continue to amass wealth and spoil myself with good food and good drink. You get that from Roger. You don't really get a romantic. Ray Finnis has a fire to him. He's a young enough, you get the young guy who, I mean, he paints, he has a romantic side. It's realistic to me, and I think that's really cool. And I love her dabbling with the occult. I think that could have been used to great effect, almost like Countess Dupre, coming down the line. And so, I think it was cool. I think she's great.
I'm skipping ahead here, and we'll just I'm going to throw the idea out, and then we'll come back around to it. She is, I believe, I could be wrong, she's the only character that doesn't have a counterpart in 1790. And they missed out because they had to rush through it, because who should she have played? She should have played Bethia Mapes.
Oh my God. That's one of my favorite from the original series. My favorite segments is the fight between Bethia and Angelique. Yep. Oh my God, that would have been so great.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah. What could have been, because they rushed it. They rushed the damn thing. And it wasn't Dan's fault. It was the network. But don't you think she would have been a good Bethia?
Oh my God, that would have been so cool on so many levels. Because we really missed a lot of. It's hard because when you hear Jonathan speak about being nearly 200 years old, even though he was put into the coffin not terribly long after he became a vampire, and sometimes you find yourself saying, well, I get that you're over 200, but a lot of that you were in a box. So you didn't really see the passage of time, through the world changing. But then you really don't get that with Ben Cross. I mean, he's bitten. He has a couple days where he runs rampant, and then things go crazy. I always say the time bomb, or the countdown. But you don't really get where. Oh, I would have loved to have seen more from Cross. That whole, and because I have to tell you, some of the most just the saddest, hardest scenes to watch are with this Joshua and Barnabas. He's a totally different.
Yes.
You get from the beginning that he loved his family and his children, whereas the old Joshua, because they had more time, had to struggle with his emotions. Oh, I do, in fact, love my family.
Yeah.
Oh, shit. Whereas this guy, right out of the gate, he's stern, but he's more fatherly. He's more husbandly. He's more, and I so wish we would have gotten more out of that,
And again, with Maggie and Roger and that, dynamic of them being lovers, and it being kept, and then Laura, who's in an institution in England, and now she's, now we have shades of that, that Phoenix storyline, although Maggie says to Vicky she's a witch. You can laugh at me if you want, but I'm telling you she's a witch.
Right.
And the fact that Vicky walks in. Well, first of all, David takes her to the private room, the painting room that no one is supposed to go into. And that, Roger's like, listen, this room and everything attached to it doesn't exist anymore. And of course, he's talking about Laura.
Yeah.
Um,
Some sometimes I get the feeling that Maggie was being groomed to replace Professor Stokes
because of the
with
occult.
the occult, and her being aware of Laura, which should be Cassandra, which is obviously they were going to skip a bit of a skip that whole thing away. So I feel like she would have been the one that maybe tied in with Barnabas and Julia to help kind of combat like the dream curse if they were to do something like that, or maybe groom to sort of replace, which would have been a great foil.
yeah, yeah. Or, I wonder if would she have been a student of Professor Stokes, and they might have
Oh right, oh right,
joined
even that, yeah, yeah.
they
You,
might
I
have
guess
joined.
you be hard pressed to get rid of Elliot. He was such a
Yeah,
big
because
part of the family.
and who knows if they didn't ask Stefan to come back and do Professor Stokes. It's possible
Maybe.
because several of the actors were already courted to come back and basically signed on to play other roles. I love what they do with that in kind of bringing some of that Phoenix stuff. It's that he's drawn to the portrait, which is essentially of his mother, the woman with the
Yeah.
baby in her arms. That clearly is supposed to be
Hmm.
Laura with David, rather than the overt flame photo from the original series. So I love that. Uh, and Joey Gordon-Levitt is great. He's
Oh yeah.
And then the stuff with Sarah. Now Sarah is being blatant. There's no hinting this time.
Right.
She
Mm-mm.
tells him Barnabas is evil. Vicky overhears them talking. Right after that, Sarah leads her to the west wing of the house and gives her diary. Um, and then they make the little pact where she's, said, David, I think that let's keep Sarah a secret between us. And if either one of us talks to her, we'll tell the other one because we have to try to figure out what she is trying to tell us. So it's great
Yeah.
that Vicky and he join forces. Barnabas has a spaz attack when she gives him the diary.
Oh yeah, that's very awkward to me, that scene, because he hurts. She's, you're hurting me. That's very awkward to me to see. And isn't she on the cliff watching them?
Yes,
And when they
yes.
walk away, you see Sarah. Yeah, that's right. It's it's very like it's funny to me to see him. Ooh, he's pinching her or something. Just stop that, you terrible
He really
creature.
like gets her by the arm, yeah.
You
Um,
you wonder what's your problem, man.
And then he softens, and then she softens and realizes like, okay, obviously he was having some kind of a
Right.
moment. I sparked something in him because he loves his family history so much.
Yeah.
So I guess that's part of it. And there she is up on Widow's Hill, Malibu, folks.
Hmm.
Watching them, that's where it's very Hollywood. Even John pointed that out. He's like, that does not look like the rocky shoreline of Maine.
right.
Right.
Um,
We've been asked this question a couple of times. I'll just put up Charles' version of it. Why was it the network's fault for rushing it?
this is a little callback, Charles, to episode 1 with this, which was, well, they wanted him to do it. Brandon Tartikoff begged him to do Dark Shadows. They did it with the agreement, a movie, 2 hours leading into a series. They put together their lineup, their fall lineup. Dark Shadows was supposed to be October 28th, 1990, and it was nowhere to be found. And they screwed him over. 2 days later, he gets a call from Tartikoff. Tartikoff says, okay, we're going to do the movie and you can have 5 episodes. And he said, Brandon, I cannot tell a story of this scope in 5 episodes. That's what got them the 13 that we ultimately got. If they had only gotten 26 episodes, the problem was, and this should really be more near the end of this series of our episodes, is Warren Littlefield took over. Brandon Tartikoff became ill. Warren Littlefield did not like the show. He didn't understand it. And as soon as he was in power, that was it. He wanted it gone. And that's why the show was ultimately canned. He did the same thing to Mama's Family. Vicki Lawrence tells this story. He didn't get rural comedy. He didn't understand a young woman playing an old woman. And they kept bouncing her around in time slots. And they still kept their ratings until finally, like the sixth time out, the ratings dropped. And they said, see, you got bad ratings, so we're getting rid of you. That's when Mama's Family was bought and then put into syndication and finished out its run in syndication. The first 2 years, I believe, was NBC. And then they dropped it and it was sold and a syndicated series. And that's why if only that could have happened with Dark Shadows, that someone would have said, we'll take it, and maybe USA, because I think USA was doing a lot of syndicated shows. But that's it. Warren Littlefield did not want it. The Gulf War actually didn't have as much to do with it as we thought it did. It was the changing of the guard, and this guy just had it in for the show. He didn't like it.
What wasn't there? If I'm not mistaken,
And then
wasn't there
the
protesting?
second question was the Angelique and Laura combination.
You first, Michael. What was it you asked?
If I remember right, people were picketing when they
Oh
canceled
my
the
God!
series.
There are photos in this book. Hang on, there they are. This is outside NBC in Burbank. Hang on, let me get it right here. And you can see the stars are there. That's Ellie Pouget and Roy Thinnis, and that's Joe Gordon-Levitt. I think because it had been canceled in favor of Midnight Caller, so Joe's sign says "Bloody Shirt Collars, not Midnight Callers." But
Oh.
and there's Lizette Anthony over there. She was there. They all went down. There was a picket at NBC in Manhattan. I was supposed to go to that, but I couldn't. Yeah, there were pickets, and Lizette kept urging the fans at the convention that following year, keep writing.
Yeah.
And she said petitions don't work. Letters, they have to get individual letters. Back in those days anyway, she said petitions are great, but they don't really look at those. They want individual letters. So
We
so
should
that
start doing that
answers,
now, people.
yeah, that
It's an
answers
issue.
that. And then Angelique and Laura were going to be combined. Lizette had been asked to come back the following season as Laura. And she said, I was thrilled and said, okay, I'm going to play her as an erotic American. That was her plan for Laura Collins. But yes, they were going to ditch Cassandra, I believe, and just make Laura and Angelique one and the same.
And then the other question we're getting is why didn't they use original actors from the series?
I think what happened out the gate was that Laura said the writing is harder. And he, as in Dan Curtis said, I had no interest in doing a new Dark Shadows or a continuum. I thought his words are, and I kind of sort of go along with this. You can only do Dark Shadows if you're going to take those great stories that we had and somehow breathe new life into them. And that's what he wanted to do. And he said, I can't do that with you guys. I'd have to write new stories for you. The idea was that if the show got picked up, the original actors would be brought in, whether it was recurring characters or cameos, that he did want to bring them in for recurring or roles, new roles, cameos, that kind of thing. But that there was no way that he could have used. And Frid was approached to play Joshua. He wanted him to play Joshua, and Frid said, thank you, but no thank you.
And then he also talked to Louis Edmonds about playing Joshua.
Louis Edmonds, from the original series, Jonathan Frid, and then Louis Edmonds, but they wanted Louis to screen test, and I believe Louis did not want to do a screen test. And then Keen Curtis as well. They were all considered for the role of Joshua Collins. But there were hopes. I mean, Laura even said, I love the new show. I wanted to be on it. That was... But Friday nights at 9 o'clock, again, kiss of death. I'll quote Laura again. It was a time when people were not normally at home. And I was home because I love Dark Shadows. Most kids, teenagers, adults were out on Friday nights. You went out. Saturday night was appointment television. It really should have followed Murder, She Wrote on Sunday nights. She was on at 8 o'clock. They should have had Dark Shadows on at 9 o'clock. You would have gone from Cabot Cove, Maine to Collinsport, Maine.
That would have been great.
That would have been.
That's what they did to Star Trek. They put it on. They moved it to Friday night, and it tanked because everybody was out. Nobody cared.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Yeah. So bad time slot.
And it's interesting, the Midnight Caller piece, because if you look at from episode 3 on, every single Dark Shadows ad that ran had and followed by Midnight Caller in the copy. So there was already a tee up.
Yeah. Yeah. I forgot where we were in the story. The storyline we were talking about Sarah coming in and giving Vicky the diary, which was inspired, and the fact that now we're getting in to dangerous territory. We talked about this briefly last week. I know you love it. You know, all of a sudden they're talking about Sarah, and the fireplace illuminates. Everything gets. You go for it, Michael.
Well, he's looking through, which is very touching. He's looking through her diary with Willie, and he gets very teary-eyed and says, "You know, you have no idea how much I love this child, Willie, and I tried my best to save her but couldn't." And it's really interesting, the whole scene, because Willie said, "Well, Jesus, why didn't you ever tell me about her before or something?" And he giggles. He sort of laughs and says,
Yeah.
"Well, I didn't think it was appropriate."
That's right.
Which would be a man of that era would think that about a servant. You know, there was a distance and a difference between, even if you love them, a servant and the master. So that was really cool. But anyway, he pulls out from the back a picture of Angelique. He said, "I think my sister is trying to tell me something." And he suddenly finds this picture of Angelique, and Willie says, "Oh my gosh, who's that? She's beautiful." And he crumbles it up. And at this point in the series, we don't know who she is. You know, we just know that it's a blonde, and he's crumbled up, and he throws it in the fireplace, and then all of a sudden the fireplace gets bigger and bigger, and there's this kind of, she pops out as a ghost, but she's making this great banshee like wail, and Willie dives behind Barnabas, and Barnabas is standing up, and he's looking at he's frightened too, but he's not backing down, and there's this whole great scene, and she finally fades back into the fireplace, and he says, "You've seen Angelique, a force so malignant that something or other reaches through time to destroy me," or something like that. But it's a great end. It's a great exclamation point.
And that was our introduction to her. And she was.
Something happened.
Uh-oh, we don't need her.
Hold, guys.
Wait a minute. Are we back?
We're back.
But I can't hear anybody.
Can you hear me?
You can't hear?
I can hear you because you're in the room with me. Michael?
Can you hear me? Testing.
I can't hear you, Michael.
Are we muted?
Oh.
Did you mute by accident? Do we have to unmute?
Let's try that.
Hello.
Can't hear Michael.
Hello?
Hold on. I'm
Red
going to
alert.
pull up my settings. Do you want to keep talking? Want to vent?
No, sure. I'll keep talking. If you try and stop me. Are we there? Are we still there? Okay.
You're still there, but I'm going to have to go ahead.
Okay. She was the last person brought in because they hemmed and hawed about Angelique. Per Lizette, you know, I had it, I didn't have it. They're interested, they're not interested. They want someone older. I'm not going to be older. They want someone black. I'm never going to be black. And there was in fact, I believe, African American Indian actress and her of the time. I'll get it for the next episode. I believe Matthew Hall was pushing for, which actually, if you think of Angelique from Martinique, it would have been a little bit more, you know, true to the period, I suppose, if they wanted to go down that road. But Lizette is the one who was ultimately cast, and she did say those flying moments. And you'll see more of them as we go into this, or we talk about them, that she said they had to cut on the budget. I was supposed to have my own flying suit, but instead I got Pee Wee Herman's flying suit from Pee Wee's Playhouse. And she said, I always dreamed about flying, but there I was 50 feet up in the air. And the pain between my legs, you know, she joked at the time, she said, I don't think I'll ever have children as a result of that flying suit. And the wailing and the laughing, she said I had to go into a sound booth. And I thought I was going to die of hyperventilation because they kept going more and more and more and bigger and bigger and bigger. Because when she wails and laughs, she really, all the echo helps. She said that certainly helped me. Laura didn't have that benefit. She had to do it, right there with the boom mic above her. But she did joke that she thought she was going to pass out from hyperventilation with doing all of the wailing and the laughing.
Michael, can you speak for a second?
Never fear.
There we are. We can hear Michael again.
We can hear him, but
Huzzah!
it's not through.
Do we still have people watching?
We have many people watching.
Oh, great. So that scene is very effective. Yeah. She gets a good one. And then I don't want to say the juxtaposition, but, now he's expecting Vicky for dinner. And this is going to be a very important dinner. And Willie is worried. What if and she writes in the diary, if you remember, you must stay away, big brother, you must stay away from the girl with the dark hair. It's dangerous for both of you. And Willie's like, she means Victoria, she means Vicky. And he throws him against the wall, the door. And then he starts crying and he's like, I just don't want anything to happen to Vicky and I don't want anything to happen to you. And he really does care about him, and he starts petting his face.
Yeah.
And
it's
so
sweet.
It's so sweet. It's so sweet the way he, starts to I promise I won't let anything happen to me and I won't let anything happen to Vicky. I promise.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And another great cliffhanger because they go back to the diary and there's her photo totally restored.
The trigger is when he says the name Sarah, isn't it?
That's it.
He says the name Sarah. Don't you mention her name ever! And he pins him against the wall, and that's what he says. I don't want to have anything happen to Miss Wintersor. I don't want to have anything happen to you, and all that.
Yeah.
You see him realize, oh wait, this is coming from a genuine spot of concern and love, and what's wrong with me, and all of that kind of thing.
He says you're a loyal friend. He says to him, "You're a loyal friend."
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Ooh, it's good.
Yeah. It is. No, it's great. That's a really, again, the fact that they go back to the diary and it's kind of like when he tears her portrait out in 1968, it's the same thing, there it is again. It's back, that's a great moment. And then again, getting into the episode where I love the opening of the episode. He gives her the music box. And that beautiful orchestration. And by the way, folks, if you haven't picked up yet, this is now the third version of Josette's music box. We have Robert Farnan's version early on in the original series. Then Colbert did his own. They reutilized that version for most of this show. And now it has more instruments and a little secondary.
There's that little tag at the end.
And in the middle as well. Da 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 da. It's taken from the Charles Randolph Green sound, Josette's music box that was done for dancing.
Oh. But
it makes it sound more, I hate to say music boxy, but it does. So now we get a third version of the music box, but that orchestration. He said, Victoria, I was born dancing the minuet.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's sweet. It's really sweet. And then Old Owl Eyes, here's the music box playing in Vicky's room. And that scene between her and Joanna going is classic.
Oh, wait, are we jumping over the making out?
Oh, Vicky and Barnabas?
Mm-hmm.
That was a couple of back.
Got it.
Yes. But where and this didn't really happen in the original series. Well, yeah, no, it did on the terrace. I take it back. It did happen where they are making out in front of Josette's portrait and he comes so close to biting her.
Mm-hmm.
And then sets her, says, you better go back to Collinwood. And this poor girl is like, what did I do?
Right, exactly.
I thought we were going to get to, second base tonight.
Well, and we talked about when The Cure, the Storm episode, where she stays the night and how great that is. And when he trips out a little bit and he says, Willie, if you care about Miss Winters, chain me up.
Yeah.
Chain me up. And he breaks out of the coffin. How creepy it is. And she says, Barnabas, I did it for you. And he goes, he's like he's vampiric. He doesn't lose that look.
No.
And the way he moves his hands, me, you know, the way he does with his hands, it's really creepy. And he comes up to her and he grabs her face, he grabs her head. I am not some sort of lab rat. You can manipulate a choice. Doctor. That's so cool.
Because he could
Very
crack her,
cool.
he could crush her skull. I mean, she lets out a yelp like, oh my God, he's going to break her head.
I mean, he just ripped the product. He just ripped through that casket and broke the chains. I mean, the guy's got something going on there. You know, it's pretty intense.
The minute she realizes he's given Vicky the music box, and again, like in the original series, Julia warns him. I mean, he has no reason to be angry with Julia. He did it himself in the original series. He made her give him all that serum, and he turns into an old man. It's not her fault. Now they kind of go into, all right, I'm going to dilute the potency of the serum. So he's not fully cured. He's going to walk that fine line of being human and a vampire at the same time.
He makes a choice, and it's an acting choice, Ben Cross, when he's in that scene, when he does the hand thing, you know, help me. He goes a little bit cockney. He says something to her, almost like a you what, but it wasn't you what. It was something along those lines. But that's what it is. Instead of your bag.
Yes.
Not your bag. Your bag, doctor. Very cockney, almost like gives you kind of like a Hyde, like a Mr. Hyde.
Yeah, great point.
Kind of feeling. He goes a little cockney, which I thought was a great choice.
Well, when she says, you know, you're willing to risk everything for that girl. Yes.
She's.
And then she lets out that little. She's like,
can you guys see me?
Can you see us?
I froze on.
Yeah, we
froze on my
for a
side.
minute. Yeah.
Okay.
You know, and he goes yes, and she's like, oh.
What is it? I saw at one of the conventions. They had two Julias, the original, and then somebody pretending to be, and then those two lines. She's all wrong for you, Barnabas, and the other one, with Grayson delivered.
They're fighting. Yeah. Yeah, they're fighting each other. Yes. I was actually in that show.
Oh yeah.
I played Barnabas Jr. It was It was David's kids. It was Barnabas Jr. and Julie for Julia.
I like that.
Yeah,
Anybody have that still?
Oh, I know. I have it somewhere. I know. I think that was called. I think that show was called Double Play.
God, I'd love to see that.
Yeah.
Any of those old shows, I'd love to see those. But that's a great. How help me? That's great.
And then at the breakfast table, we think everything is great, and the camera work was very slick because he obviously kind of sort of has. And John wondered what was going on because I was giggling. Ben has a hand double.
Oh,
so,
yeah.
None of that is his hands. That's somebody underneath him. And if you go on and watch Dark Shadows Resurrected, we need to transfer that tape.
Okay.
In the blooper reel, you see where they're in between shots, and the guy's hands are there, and then Ben takes his hands out, and he takes out a nail file, and he starts filing the guy's nails down.
Oh, that'd be cool to see that part of that, you know?
Yeah, there's a great blooper reel for the, it's just like, it's a scene with him and Julia. Barbara Steele.
Barbara Steele, yeah.
And he goes, I forgot my lines. Why are you looking at me that way, Julia? Did you spike the hypodermic? And there's Steele just sitting there because of the close-ups on her, and she's like... those big bug eyes.
Those eyes are hers, man.
Oh my God, yes, and she knows how to work them. She knows how to work them.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Oh yeah.
Then Carolyn comes to the
then
house.
Carolyn comes to the house, and we get, as we said, a kind of a very over the top, grotesque Barnabas. And what I love about the scene and the original series, it's chilling. That scene is so chilling when Nancy Barrett finds the coffin room. And I kind of sort of miss that, except they make up for it with that he doesn't realize what he's done, or rather who he's done it to. It's when Willie says, "What did you do?" And he looks down and he lets out this primal wail
Yeah.
that's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
It's so. Is this what you were going to talk about?
Exactly.
Yeah, it gives him that great thing that Jonathan had, that kind of like, why is this happening?
Yeah. Yeah. Then he pulls himself together too. I like that too. When he's like, "All right, this is the way it is."
And he throws the candle at the mirror when he sees he doesn't have a reflection anymore.
Yeah. Yep. It is what it is. I like also they do it again with the darkness of Collinwood, that they give it that thundering dun dun dun. I think that's great. I love that they did that. But yeah, that's when he does the bone of my bone, or you are the flesh of my flesh. That's
Blood
when
of
he
my
delivers that
blood,
line.
blood of my blood, kin of my
Raises,
kin.
yep, raises her up. I think that's really cool.
And the fact that he totally reverts,
We'll walk
because
together through the night.
you'll be my partner in the night. So he's really going down an alley here with Carolyn, and if it could affect the kiss, I mean, it's he's got his sights set on Victoria, but yet he's making out with his cousin. I guess when in Rome, she's a pretty girl. Why not? I just exchanged bodily fluids with her, so.
Right, exactly.
He had Willie look up what the latest on brain damage is for children. The latest thought on that it was, and all that, and he looked well. Millicent in 1795 was supposed to be their cousin, and she was going to be with Jeremiah. She was coming to be. Yeah, she was coming to be with Jeremiah. So it's I guess sort of in his time conceivable. Now, Carolyn.
I'm sorry.
Carolyn, she's sort of like the Lucy. Was it Lucy or Lucy?
Or Mina.
In Dracula, who
Lucy.
Lucy.
Who, what does he say in Coppola's Dracula? She wasn't a victim chosen by mere chance. No, she was a willing disciple, a recruit, the devil's concubine. He calls her in the Coppola Dracula. So this sort of goes back to that what we were saying earlier about Carolyn being a little bit naughty. You're being wicked. Her body's not yet cold, and you're already, heading after her boyfriend on a boat, by the way, named after her.
Right.
So one normally has to go to a bowling alley to meet someone of your stature, but that's kind of what's going on there. So it's interesting that she's the one that. I did notice too is that Cross doesn't use the cane the way Fred did.
No,
he walks with it at night, but even sometimes when he's stalking, he doesn't have it with him. And Fred used it a lot through the house. It was definitely very much a part of Barnabas, much more than, with. I noticed that when Barnabas was old, he actually used it as a cane, like a prop to prop himself up with, not just a walking stick. So it was.
And we missed all that too. Like again, when Carolyn sees him, I think is it Carol through the drawing room window. He's spying on the family. All that great stuff that we had with Grayson and Jonathan, by again reverting to the House of Dark Shadows moment as the old man. Yeah. Even right down to the with Jonathan, they kind of do this weird flashback style thing, and with Ben, it's slowly. Like computer. You can see the computer work is slowly, morphing him back. Yeah. But But, when he says, she did this to me, Dr. Hoffman, and she will pay. I mean, it's, again, that really left you. This is where the series just kept getting better and better and better.
It hit a pitch. It was hitting a real heavy pitch.
Yeah.
And that's where I feel sorry for the people on YouTube. They don't get the costume ball where he sends, he's very cold to Dr.
Which is
Hoffman.
perfect since we're...
I don't think we're going to get to episode 6 tonight.
Well, that's what I mean. It actually worked in our favor that, since John and I didn't get to watch it, I'll pull out my DVDs, and next episode we'll start with 6 through 13. We'll try to cover that. The whole 1790 sequence.
6 through 12.
6 through 12.
Yeah.
So it worked in our favor. I don't know why it's not up there, guys. You can watch almost the whole series on YouTube. You can buy used copies of the DVD sets. We have both of them. There was one with Ben's face kind of drawn into the moon, a very artsy sketch. And then they did another re-release with him and Joanna as Josette in their 1790s attire. That's the second DVD release. We have not yet had a Blu-ray release. I think we need to petition for one after this podcast is done.
And then we've had this comment a few times, so people joined late tonight.
Sure.
We recognize and totally agree that the night filter that was used still looks like daytime. And in the cleaned up DVD version, it even looks more like daytime. So it'd be amazing if on the Blu-ray release, if they would go through and...
They need the MPI videotapes. Those kept the filtered shots the way they were on when they aired. So at least it looked a little bit more like nighttime, because when you see Daphne stalking David, I'm like, it's even when Barnabas attacks her, it's sunlight.
Yep.
So for a Blu-ray release, they need to go in, plus anything that was cut. I keep mentioning Dark Shadows Resurrected. MPI released that. Wonderful interviews with the actors, Jim Fife, Barbara Steele, Joanna Going, I believe Michael T. Weiss, outtakes. There is a blooper reel, which is a lot of fun to watch. So they really should put that on the Blu-ray release. But I don't know who owns it. I'm assuming it's NBC Universal that still owns the rights to the original show. I guess MPI might have had the rights briefly. And that would be up to Jim Pearson, I think, to, or certainly the Curtis estate, the daughters. But I think we're all agreed we need a Blu-ray release of the NBC series.
Yep.
Absolutely. So
you can't. Pardon me. You can't even stream it. Like, it's not available on Amazon anymore. The original series, every episode, you can either purchase or watch. This you can't even watch.
Yeah.
Or purchase on Amazon. I don't know what's going on with the whole thing, but it's tragic.
It really is. It really is. I need to mention, guys, don't forget, there is a Dark Shadows event happening at Lyndhurst Mansion on July 19th and 20th, hosted by Catherine Lee Scott. There will be other surprise guests. I believe that's a Friday and a Saturday, or a Saturday, Sunday.
Friday, Saturday.
So, 2-day event.
Or is it Saturday, Sunday?
I think it's Saturday, Sunday.
It's Saturday, Sunday.
I think it's Saturday, Sunday, yeah. So check that out. They have not released any more information as yet, but she has given the green light that it is happening. So for the East Coast fans that want to attend something, it should be a lot of fun. I know we can't wait to go. I'm sure Marie is going to be there. I don't want to speak for Marie, but I'm sure Marie is going to be there. She never misses a fan event if she can possibly help it. So, and it says surprise guests, so who knows who's going to show up. So don't forget that. Check that out. Please like and subscribe, and we will be back in a couple of days, maybe Sunday evening, depending upon what our schedules are like. We'll be back soon.
Soon is good. We'll talk amongst ourselves.
Yeah, we will be back in the next couple of days, where we will cover episodes 6 through 12 or 13, however you want to look at it. So thank you so much for tuning in tonight and bearing with us. And stay in the shadows, folks.